Hi, I want to demonstrate to you how to add a button to your components admin view, either in the list area or in the edit area of the view. Now, I possibly have touched on this in previous tutorials, but I thought, well, let's make one tutorial that just deals with that. Okay, so I have a blank install of JCB here. I've just got this demo component installed or mapped, and I've installed it into this website. So if I go to looks, it just looks as it should. We can create an item and just give it some details. Say okay, and we click save and close, and we have an item. Now you see there's a whole bunch of buttons here, and if you go into the test, there's also a bunch of buttons here. All of them are usually there. Those are the default buttons. So what we want to do is we want to actually create buttons in these areas without custom coding. You can of course do it with custom coding, but there is a JCB way to do it, in JCB quite easily. So let's go back to our admin views, and then we open the admin view called look. And you'll see there's a custom buttons area here. We click on that and we say yes, we want to add a custom button. Now you'd see that it opens controller methods and also list view controller methods. Now that will obviously, you need to understand the MVC, your controller, your model, again your controller and your model. Each view has two controllers, two models, because it has a list view and it has a edit view. The list view has its own controller and model, and the edit view has its own controller and model. So depending on where you're placing the button, it will affect which model and which controller you need to use. Now, I'm not going to explain much about the PHP being placed in these blocks, because that should be something you know how to do. If you don't, you need to learn, you need to study to work with the Joomla API. I'm not able to also educate you on that now at this stage. So you do a custom button, you click on adding a button. Here's your icon. You can select any of the icons. These are the default Joomla icons that they use. It's called icon moon or something. So you can use that. Then the name of the button, what you want to call it. So I'm just going to call it test for now. Then the name of the controller method. So I'm going to just call that get tested. And then we'll decide, is this going to be an edit view, a single view target, a list view, or both? Where must this button show up? So I'm going to do just one for first list, and then if it's a list view, see that it says list target, then we could decide whether this is only a function. Now when it's a selection, it means that you need to select some items and then click the button for it to actually submit those IDs of the selected items. If it is only a function, you don't need to select anything. When you click the button, a function will obviously be triggered, which doesn't require you to give it any information. So it's basically just gonna do something, and that obviously you need to be able to code that. Okay, so I'm just gonna use the default. The default is actually very much like selection, but it behaves differently if you I think the best way to do this is select one of the options, compile the component, and go look at the code, and I'll show you where the code ends up, and then you can decide what you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to just save this as a selection in a list view and save. Okay, at this stage, if we do not add values to these blocks, for some reason it will scream at us, so we just add two forward slashes, which basically satisfies its requirement of having information. I'm going to add a little method here that's simply going to redirect us to the dashboard, and I'm going to call it get tested. That is simply a controller method. It must be public. Here we're simply checking whether it was submitted from the current website, and then we're just going to redirect to the components dashboard. Here we're not going to need a method now because we're just redirecting, but if you I'll show you that in a minute. Let me just do this for now, and then let's save and close, and let's go compile this component. So we'll just select the demo component, compile it, and then reinstall it to see the changes. I'm going to go to the component and then to looks, and now we'll see there's a new button called test, and if we click it, it simply redirects us to the dashboard. So that's all it does. It just redirects us, and you can then obviously redirect to anything. So that's just the first way of implementing a button in the list view. Now let us go back to editing that functionality there to showing you some more options. So I'll just open this again. Go to custom buttons. Now maybe just add another button. We call it single, and we again call it something like and the controller method, and we'll leave this to default, and then save. So now in the controller method we said we're going to have a function called get done, and so here we'll just put a public function so this time we will actually get the model and then do something with it in the model. We can also get the item values, since the moment you click this button you're inside of the item and it'll automatically submit the form. So we can actually grab those item values. Obviously it could be different values from what's in the database. Just keep that in mind, because you could change the values, then click that button and it'll actually submit these new changed values. Yet those values have not been saved to the database, and so if you want those values to actually now be in the database, you'll need to actually put it there, and that's again, I'm not going to demonstrate how to do that, but the model has a save method, and you should actually just do the necessary sanitation and then trigger the save method, and it should store the data. So for our purposes, I'm just going to grab the data and not go through all that. I'm just going to do a little, verification maybe, and then return back either an error or success. So first we're going to get the values. So now that we have the data, we can check whether the values that we want to use is actually there and available. So let's say we want to make sure that this is already a saved item, then we at least check whether the ID is more than 0. We need to have a name, and then we can check for that. And so we can do some checking within the controller before we trigger the model and run the function we intend. Then we trigger the model, we decide what we want to call our method in the model. So I just chose something random, and then we can just create that method in the model area, and then do whatever we want to do. So we start doing some logic in the model. We've set out our method, our controller. Now we're busy with the model area. Now do keep in mind that if the model is unsuccessful, we want to do something. If the data is set but the model has not been successful, we want to do something. And if the data isn't set, we also want to do something. So those are the areas where in which we can add some messages that we want to give back to the user to tell them what's happening. And so in the model, we're basically just going to perform our task, and when we have achieved our goal, we give back true. Whether we have failed, we give back false, and then that would trigger our messages in the controller. So this is just giving a basic overview of setting up some model controller connected with a button. So I'm going to add some of this code in here. You're welcome to pause the movie and then jot down whatever you'd like to reuse. But the reality is you should actually be able to do this without my help. And therefore, if you don't know what I'm doing here, then please go Google a little more, go find out some more tutorials elsewhere on how to create model and controller relationships in Joomla using its API. The other reality is you can obviously open this model and controller of this specific view in your IDE, and in there you can see whether how the code is actually added and what is happening and how is it done, and you can educate yourself that way as well. Okay, I'm just going to add the code in then. Okay, so here I've just added some code that you can also reuse, and this basically, if the work has been done, we let the user know it's done. If the work wasn't done, we also let him know. If we couldn't even detect the required values, then we just throw major error and just quit out. So that is really the controller. I didn't populate much of the model because you should design your own logic, but I do return true, so to give this first message. Then we'll go to the IDE, change that to false again to demonstrate the response, and just play around with the code in the IDE to give you a sort of a feel of how to approach it from that direction. Okay, so we're going to just save this. Then go and compile it again. Don't want to back up. Just compile it. And then install the new compiled version and open the component. Go to looks. So we can see our test button still here. If we click it, it still takes us to the dashboard. Now let's open the test. Now we have a new button here, worked. If we click it now, it'll basically give us the work was done because our method returns true. Now let me open the IDE. Okay, looking at our controller, we see that down here somewhere, oh, this is the front end. I should go to the back end. Okay, there it is. Controller. First we're gonna open the list one, which is the plural version, and here we see get tested was added, and there's our little method. Then if we go to the edit singular one. Then get done. Here's our method and all our functions, and JCB has added the script to the translation text. So everything here looks fine. If we now go to the model and we open the look model, we'll see that it has a new method added here somewhere. Just scroll down till we see it. Oh, sorry, it was way up here. I scrolled fast and so I missed it. So it's just here after get table. Here it's added our little method. So I'll now add this to false and save. Go back to Joomla and then click our button again, and now it says work was not done because the method returned false. So if we change that to true again and save, then it should work. Now let's test out another one. Let's also make this not execute. Save this so we can get this error. Go back to Joomla, click our button, and now it even kicks us out of the item, and it says a major error has occurred. Now the reason why it kicked us completely out of the item, it didn't check it in, which is actually not ideal, but you could fix that by looking at some of the other controllers and seeing what they do when they want to kick you out. Educate yourself by looking at some of how Joomla implements some of these features. Okay, so we basically got what we expected. We're going to change this back, save, go back to the view, open that view again, click our button, and now we get all this done and good. Okay, so that's just a quick demonstration of adding a list button as well as adding a button inside of the edit view. Like I said, you could actually add one button both as a list and inside if you were to go to that specific button. Let's demonstrate that quickly, and we can open it, and then instead of saying list here, we say both, and we click save. Now we'll obviously have to add this method get tested also to the single view like that, and then save. And then close out of this, compile, can you believe it? I keep on clicking that backup. I'm so used to doing that. And it won't work now because I haven't set up the correct paths. Okay, install it. Now let's first go look at the code. Now to help you see where the button is being added, I mean, I've shown you the controller, I've showed you the model, but if you go to the view and you open look and you open this view html.php and you go to add toolbar, you'll see that here it actually has added a custom button, get done and get tested, to the view, and it is basically that is the method that is gonna be called by this specific button. So it's gonna look in the look controller and get this method. That's really how it works. It also adds a switch, a permissional switch to the button. If this specific user doesn't have the right to do the worked button, then it won't show the button, and it will also if you carry those permission structures through to your controller, it'll stop it even from being executed, manually by a URL. But that kind of security and implementation, you'll need to know how to do that. Look at Joomla's way of implementing it, because you need to, in the controller, check whether this user has the permission, and so you need to know how to check that permission as well. Okay, so that's just showing you how the button gets added into the view, and where that code is, and you can go look at it. Now going back to Joomla and basically opening our component, and we go to looks, we still have our tested here, but now if we open the edit, we'll see how we got tested here as well. And if we click it, it'll also just take us to the dashboard and perform the same function as it would have if we clicked there. Okay, so that is just showing you that you can add one button to both the list view as well as the edit view of the backend admin area. I hope this will be useful, and thank you for watching.